Session 1, Prehistory, 11,000 to 7,000 years ago. Before history began, there was love. It was expressed in art in the form of small stone carvings, such as this one from the Ain Akri caves near modern Bethlehem, depicting two lovers in mid-coital embrace, resembling the shape of a human heart muscle, dating from 11,000 years ago. The human who carved this artifact lived in the Levant, or Fertile Crescent region, among a tribe of up to 100 people, who archaeologists call the Natufians. They settled the lands of the Kebaran cave dwellers, their ancestors, who had moved from the upland steppes in summer to the lower lakeside caves in winter from 20,000 to 12,000 years ago. The Natufians invented the sickle for harvesting wild grains and were the first people to domesticate the growing of figs, which they imported from the area of Sudan in northeastern Africa, south of the Nile, across the Red Sea from the Sinai Peninsula. The records of civilization as we define it today can be dated only so long ago as the semi-sedentary dwelling place Ainan Malaha by Lake Hula, founded around 12,000 years ago. Here has been found the earliest evidence of animal domestication, the burial of a person with a pet dog. 11,500 years ago, the Natufian tribespeople spread to the east and settled at Abu Huraya Mound, near the south bank of the Euphrates River. Here about 300 people dwelt in round brush huts with holes in the floor for storing food to keep it cool. The Natufians soon expanded to the foothills of the Taurus Mountains, where they built square stone houses at Nevel Khori on both banks of the Kantara stream, a tributary of the Euphrates. Here they settled, and nearby at Göbekli Tepe, Turkish for Potbelly Hill, they erected the first megalithic structures. Although the purpose of these strange T-shaped stone pillars surrounded by circular stone walls remains a mystery to modern archaeologists due to the many carvings on their surfaces of animals, including the scorpion and birds seen here, it may be they were built as large storehouses for the cultivation of cereal grains such as rye, which have been found dating from around 11,050 years ago at Abu Huraya Mound. 10,500 years ago, the Natufian people built the city of Jericho, 6 acres of round mud brick houses, housing some 2,000 to 3,000 people. 10,000 years ago, they built a wall 5 feet thick and 15 feet tall surrounding the city, with a lone lookout tower nearly 30 feet tall. Around that time, the settlement of Abu Huraya seems to have been abandoned, with the Natufians of the foothills moving northwest behind the fortified wall of the Jericho proto-city, or to nearby Asikli Hayuk, founded around 10,000 years ago on volcanic turf near Melendez Brook. The first evidence of making beads for use as jewelry dates from this time at Asikli Mound, using azurite, amber, jade, and bone. 9,500 years ago, the Natufians built up Katel Hayuk, Turkish for fork mound, on twin alluvial clay mounds the eastern of which rises 66 feet above the Konya Plains wheat field, with the Karsamba River flowing between them from the twin-coned Hassan Dag volcano, some 87 miles to the northwest. 9,300 years ago, settlers moved back into Abu Harea, and by this time were herding animals and sun-baking molded mud to form the world's first pottery. 9,250 years ago, the Natufians constructed Ain Ghazal, a complex of up to 3,000 rectangular, two-room, lime-plastered mud wall houses stretching across 30 acres, some 4 or 5 times the size of contemporary Jericho. At Ain Ghazal, the people herded domesticated goats, wove hair fibers into fabrics, and cultivated a wide variety of cereals, including wheat and barley, and legumes, beans, peas, and lentils. The Natufians of Ain Ghazal were also the first to make face masks and one-half life-size dolls from painted white plaster, using cowrie shells for eyes. Some of the dolls have a limbless rectangular torso and 2 heads. At Ain Ghazal, the Natufians buried their dead in 2 ways. One was preservation of the deceased's severed head in a grave beneath their family house. The other was disposal of the body in the communal waste pits. From 8,100 to 7,500 years ago, the Natufians became the Halaf and Hassuna painted pottery cultures. Inventors of the wheel, pressed leaf paper, and the engraved cylinder seal. Ketul Hayuk remained continuously populated until 7,700 years ago. Abu Harea and Ain Ghazal were abandoned 7,000 years ago. From 7,500 to 6,800 years ago, the Neolithic Halaf and Hassuna cultures became the Chalcolithic Samaran culture. They migrated southeast and settled in Choga Mami, Tel Sawan, and Sur Marati on the alluvial clay plain between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers near the northern shore of the Persian Gulf. They built massive canal systems to irrigate vast tracts of crops, and from 6,800 years ago had invented metal sickle blades, the horse-drawn chariot, and sailboats. By 5,400 years ago, the cuneiform alphabet had evolved into the use of clay tokens as money, and by 5,000 years ago, cities were built covering up to 250 acres to house as many as 20,000 people. Session 2. Sumerian Civilization, 7,000 to 6,000 years ago. Part 1. The Sumerians. Here we can see how the Sumerians depicted themselves. This collection of varying-sized dolls shows shirtless, bearded men with long hair and women with bobbed or bunned hair wearing togas. All hold their hands together before their hearts in the supplicant gesture. This bust of an Adamu worker shows the typical facial features of a Sumerian youth. The lips are thin, the eyes large and almond-shaped, usually made of cowrie shells, and the forehead is marked by the distinctive unibrow of Sumerian art. Here we see a small diorite statue of Gudea of Lagash from 4,130 years ago. Note his bare feet, his round, bearded crown, and his seated supplicant position. The inscription on his robe is in cuneiform, the alphabetic language of Sumer. Here we see the legal code of Hammurabi, written 3,760 years ago, in the alphabetic language of cuneiform. In this incredible alphabetic language we find long texts engraved on clay, such as this one, describing observations of the passing of Halley's Comet. In this fragmented relic we see an ancient Sumerian map of the globe. From this era dates the writing of the first work of novel fiction and predecessor to the Torah. In this cylinder seal we see a scene from the Epic of Gilgamesh, where Gilgamesh and Enkidu kill Humbaba. Next we see another depiction showing the same event engraven on stone. Also engraven on stone is this tablet containing a portion of the 4,500-year-old story describing an ancient worldwide flood that occurred before the beginning of recorded history. Session 2. Sumerian Civilization, 7,000 to 6,000 years ago. Part 2. The God, Shamash Utu. Prior to the events described in the biblical book of Exodus, one language was spoken, and the global deluge had not yet occurred. One religion spanned the entirety of all existent civilizations, from the Vedic Aryans in India, China, and Tibet, to the Sumero-Akkadians in pre-Babylonian Mesopotamia, to the Old Kingdom Hyksos and Ethiopian Egyptians along the African Nile River. The winged disk originally symbolized a concept similar to the modern Holy Trinity. It depicts the divine goddess as the central vesica, womb, Pisces, fish, while the divine Messiah is expressed as emanating from within in the form of the twin wings, symbolizing the flight of time, or serpents, symbolizing time's shifting sands. In this image from modern-day Zoroastrianism, the good god, called Ahura Mazda, mounts the winged disk called a Faravarhar, alike the Vimana of the Veda, to complete the trinity of God, Goddess, and Messiah. This symbol of modern Zoroastrian religion dates back to the earliest written records of history, many millennia before the first writing of the Torah by Moses. The symbol of God inside a winged, flying, disc-shaped craft, his Faravarhar Vimana, dates back to the earliest city-states of Mesopotamia. This relic depicts the same image from the era of the Akkadian Empire some 3,000 years ago, though they called this god not Ahura Mazda then, but Ashur. This symbol appears even earlier in this Chaldean cylinder seal imprint. Here we see the god in his flying vessel floating above a crescent moon, symbolizing the spring equinox in the contemporary vocabulary. On the far right stands a man gesturing at the god. To his left stands a shorter man, clad in the garb of a fish. Between these two, directly below the crescent eclipse, stands an arched doorway surrounded by 17 flames. Behind the mer-priest is a creature called Tiamat, a snake with wings and legs. Above Tiamat shines a 16-point star, to the right of which appear 7 orbs. Here is a similar depiction also from Chaldea prior to the Akkadian occupation. Here again the 17 flames surrounding the arched gate, the fish-clad priest, and the god in his Faravarhar aircraft are all meticulously copied. The Chaldean examples show the fish-clad priest character quite clearly. However, his exact function in their society has since been lost. That he is a human male holding a small sphere and wearing on his own head the face-up, mouth-agape skin of a large fish is quite clear from the depictions. In this carved stone bust of one of these mermen, from the Sumerian collection in the Louvre Museum in Paris, France, We see the shape of their crown makes their heads appear elongated, but that their facial features remain distinctly human in all traits. Likewise, we see another example of the elongated skull in this small doll, also from the Uruk period, 7,000 years ago. This one-third scale doll possesses a different set of facial traits than those shown in the larger-than-life scale bust. This small doll has large almond-shaped black eyes and a small, narrow-lipped mouth. Obviously, however, both bust and doll depict males, since the doll has anatomically accurate male genitalia. In one of the oldest cylinder seal impressions unearthed from the Uruk period, we can see a clear depiction of the same mer-priest character on the far right, holding a six-rayed orb up in his hand. In the middle we see the Faravarhar Vimana, the winged disc, above a small triangular platform, in turn above a large fish or dolphin. On the far left appears the god, dethroned from his sky chariot, manifesting his four-armed form, each arm symbolizing a seasonal element. He holds below a cup and downward-pointed sword, and above 7 orbs and a crescent. One of the next earliest known cylinder seals impresses this depiction of the god, now seated on a cubic throne, counseling with a second figure who appears to have 2 faces. Beside this figure stands a staff atop of which are 6 rays. Following this, we see this post-Akkadian era impression from a cylinder seal labeled with cuneiform writing. Here we see the god, identified by his turban-shaped crown, remains seated on his cubic throne, while before him 2 men appear, the one closer to the god seemingly dragging the other one by his wrist. Behind and above the 2 men is a 6-rayed orb surrounded by 11 smaller orbs. In this Chaldean version of the motif, we see the god on the far right seated on his cubic throne, holding the symbols of kingship, the loop and the line, in his right hand, behind a brick pillar. Inside the god's partition are 3 orbs, one with 7 rays, one with 8 rays, and one a crescent. Outside the god's partition stand 3 very short people relative in size to the stature of the god. The first appears to be dragging the second by the wrist again, and the third and last in the lower left appears to be a female. Between the partition occluding the god and the 3 small people looking up at him, we see a symbol of Tiamat as an orb of 4 rays and 4 rivers, set atop a platform that dwarfs the people by its size. Here, in an early Akkadian period cylinder seal, we see the god again seated on his cubic throne, with his now familiar beard and twin flowing river symbols signifying autumn equinox around him. His sometimes turban-like crown appears like horns, on the same level as the crescent, again a sign of springtime in Sumerian culture. Just below this crescent is a star of 8 stellations. 3 small fish are jumping upstream along one of the god's river symbols, and 3 people the same height, standing up as the god is sitting down, surrounded the god on both sides. On opposite sides of the god, the 2 males who wear beards grasp downward-pointing spears with hourglass-like shapes atop their upside-down base ends. The 2 men appear to be holding open the partition between them, and the god, while the woman on the far left looks in on him. This highly stylized, late Akkadian period cylinder seal impression commemorates the coronation of Gudea over Lagash, and shows the same scene as before, wherein the god is seated on the far right on a cubic throne, surrounded by autumnal river symbols. The 3 people are, again, the man holding the other man by the wrist, both followed by the female supplicant, seen here wearing a crescent horn crown. The man dragged by the other man is bald and wears a mild toga, while the man dragging him toward the god is bearded and wears an identical crown to the god. In this depiction, the god is shown passing over from his hands unto the crowned man a small vase containing a plant. Behind the woman's back on the far left creeps Tiamat, the winged, four-legged serpent. Session 2. Sumerian Civilization, 7,000 to 6,000 years ago. Part 3. The Devil, Tiamat. As we have briefly examined the crescent orb symbol of spring equinox, the fish-man symbol of winter solstice, and the river symbols of autumnal equinox, we should also examine the symbolism of Tiamat. Tiamat's earliest depictions are as upright walking, four-legged snakes with wings, frequently seen wearing crowns. Here we see twin Tiamats of this form holding twin corsair swords by the blades towards a single serpent coiled around itself in 6 loops with a head at both ends of its body. Just as the male doll from the earliest Uruk period depicted the same elongated head motif as the fish priests of Chaldea, so too does the female counterpart of that doll exhibit very similar facial features to a reptile, such as a serpent. She holds a small baby to her breast, and the baby appears to have horns. The reptilian motif has long been a symbol for Tiamat. In this Uruk period carving of a life-scale mask, we find the same reptilian features as the serpent symbolizing Tiamat. Just as Tiamat, symbolized by the winged, four-legged dragons encaging the twin-headed serpent, guards the tree of life, so are their guardians over the tree of knowledge. While the tree of life was symbolized by the twin-headed serpent, the tree of knowledge is a complex geometrical arrangement of 13 blossoms on a vine lattice around a central blooming trunk. While the guardians of the 15-flamed arched doorway were the fish-robed men symbolizing winter, the guardians of the 13 blossoming tree of knowledge are garbed as birds with the head of the phoenix and 2 wings. They water the tree of knowledge and pick the blossoms from it, and just as the dragons ensnaring the double-headed snake of the tree of life, these anthropomorphized avians also represent Tiamat. To return to the doings of the god while he sat on his cubic throne and was not riding the sky in his Faravarhar Vimana, when we finally see him equaled in stature, it comes from this low relief from Lagash. On one side sits the god, offering in his outstretched right hand the ring and the rod symbolizing kingship. On the opposite side sits a goddess, wearing the same form of turban crown as the god, reaching out to receive the offering with her left hand. Between them grows a single enormous potted leaf. Note that the god holds back his scepter flail. Next, we see another extremely ancient cylinder seal imprint, dating from 6 to 7,000 years ago. We see on the far right a tree with 8 branches, each with 1 leaf. To the left of this tree sits the goddess on her cubic throne, wearing a crown of crescent horns. She holds in her lap a young child with a single long forelock of hair. Below the child, at the goddess's feet, is a pit dug in the ground. On the opposite side of this pit from the goddess stands a man with short hair and no beard offering up a cup. Behind this man on the far left is another man kneeling down to adjust the lid atop a canister that sits on a short tripod platform. Above this is a shelf with 3 narrow vases on it. In this mid to late Akkadian cylinder seal, we see all these elements depicted in one scene. On the outermost flanks are the twin, bird-headed and winged men representing Tiamat. They apply their blossoms to the fish priests, who, in turn, apply the river symbols from the god above to a 15-stemmed, newly budding tree. Above, in the center, we see again the god in his Faravarhar Vimana, now facing the opposite direction he was when he arrived to be greeted by the fish priests. Here is a later post-Babylonian cylinder seal inscription showing 4 epic heroes, each alike Gilgamesh in facial appearance, kneeling to hold up standards bearing the symbols of the 4 seasons. On the left we see the orb form of Tiamat symbolizing summer, the water symbol representing autumn, the fish man symbolizing winter, and the crescent symbol representing the return once again to spring. A rising serpent marks the end and restart date per annum. As we shall see, the use of animalistic symbols to signify the 4 elemental seasons was a precursor to the Babylonian Dendara zodiacs, as well as Egyptian and Mesoamerican hieroglyphics, and began a trend that has not stopped since. Here we see the Ishtar Gate of Babylon, erected 2,575 years ago. It is decorated with low reliefs of bulls, signifying summer, lions with their tails up or down representing spring and autumn, and, representing winter, we come back again to Tiamat. In this image from a Sumerian cylinder seal, at least some 5,000 years old, we see the god standing upright on the left, identified by his beard. He displays the gesture of supplication toward Tiamat, depicted as a 4-legged serpent. On Tiamat's back is a platform or saddle, in the middle of which stands an erect pillar or column, at the top of which is a triangle pointing upward. The combined height of Tiamat and this pillar is equal to the height of the upright standing god. From a pre-Babylonian cylinder seal, we imprint this image, showing the god on the left, identified by his beard and turban crown, drawing back a bowstring to shoot an arrow toward a winged Tiamat, who appears on the right, rearing back on its hind legs. The image of Tiamat resembles a combination of the 4-legged serpent, lion, and bull motifs. Between the god and Tiamat, above the trajectory of the arrow, sits the winged disc motif of Ahura Mazda's Faravarhar. Beneath this, between the god and Tiamat, is a crowned and bearded supplicant, surrounded in a sphere offering 3 small orbs toward the god. The battle between the god and Tiamat is further depicted in this low-relief cylinder seal from the Akkadian Empire era. The god in the upper left shoots his arrow toward Tiamat, seen in mid-retreat, aimed directly at Tiamat's head. Again, we see Tiamat as an exospecies of zoomorph, resembling a combination of avian and reptilian characteristics, with feet and wings like a bird, and the torso and head of a snake. Behind Tiamat's turned head, in the direction of its body's retreat, we see a 7-rayed orb above, and below an 11-petaled arc. Beneath the feet of the god crouches a griffin, that is, a winged lion, which may depict the god's Faravarhar from the side. In this low-relief carving from the era of the First Babylonian Empire, Tiamat appears again on the retreat from the god. However, here their positions are reversed from left to right. Tiamat, on the left, looks over its winged shoulder at the god, on the right, who is chasing after Tiamat, carrying a bundle of 3 arrows in each hand. Tiamat appears as a combinatory zoomorph again, with the head of a bull, the neck of a snake, the front paws and torso of a lion, the back legs and 2 wings of a bird. The god appears with 1 foot off the ground, his customary beard and crown, and 4 wings. Here we see Tiamat as a combinatory zoomorph, again from the Babylonian wall carving. Note the manneristic attention paid to the thumbs on its front paws. The nails or claws on them are crooked. Here we can more clearly see Tiamat has the horns of a bull, the belly of a snake, and the back of a bird, Its snarling face appears in great detail with an emphasis on its bat-like nostrils and fangs. This statuette from the Akkadian Empire period shows a character very similar to Tiamat. This mixed zoomorph has the legs of a ram or goat, male genitalia, the paws of a lion, 4 wings, and the hairless head of a snarling lion. This statuette represents Pazuzu, the demigod of the southwest wind. There are similar miniature busts from this era that show Pazuzu in greater detail, with 3 concentric circles for eyes, an upturned nose like a pig, shallow cheeks, and a menacing set of fangs. Other zoomorphs include lion-headed upper torso busts with the neck and front legs of a dragon. As we see in this circular arrangement of glyphs from Babylonian Chaldea, the zoomorphs catalogued by the people of this era included an array of familiar animals alongside representations of combined trait beasts. We see in this zodiac a snake, a bird, a turtle, 2 beehives, a dog, and a scorpion. We see also 3 orbs, from left to right a crescent, a 4-point star emanating 4 wave symbols, and an 8-point star. We see also 2 griffiths. All of these catalog symbols of Tiamat.